It was a very interesting presentation, and one of the interesting facts you brought in is that the date of independence was advanced. To that, I want to bring the people back into the conversation.
A short question, please.
Yeah. The main issue is we all know that 5 to 10 lakhs people were killed during the partition, and there is no satisfactory explanation, and we came to know that there is no plan for partition. So when you have answered to some extent that the date was advanced and there is no proper plan for the partition, then do you think that was responsible for this massive killing and massacre?
Thank you. Yes, please. Please identify yourself.
Hello, thanks for the presentation. My name is Kamal. I work for the Economist Intelligence Unit. My question is related to Ambassador Menon's comment that we might actually see Afghanistan not being run from Kabul after the current, the ongoing process is done. Sir, my question is, how bad really can it get with a US withdrawal? Because bulk of the fighting right now is happening with the Afghan security forces on the ground. So with good enough training, with intelligence support, and maybe with some air power, can the Afghan security forces actually hold on to where they are? Yeah.
I would just add to that, if you would like to comment, sir, the abrogation of 370, to what extent did the geostrategic situation and reading possibly matter in this constitutional change?
Okay, I'm Gerald Chopra. I'm very happy you wrote this book because I am from the NWFP. I'm from Mansehra, Hyderabad, close to Balakot, where the thing actually took place. Anyway, since we're talking history, I'll come back to the author. We've had a lot of discussion with the ambassador and Shanti. Now, what if we had got NWFP, the Congress would have got NWFP, we would have been in a situation, one unviable East Pakistan and one unviable Indian NWFP, which becomes part of this greater India that you are all talking about now. We would have had, in my view, a Bangladesh by Pakistan in the NWFP. There have been more tensions and there have been further problems. I'm not going to talk of the Holocaust. I've been through it. And on Afghanistan, just very quickly, yes, we have to talk to the Taliban. That is the channel we should have never given up. I mean, I have served in Nagaland, Mizoram in the early 50s. We made friends with the leader of the underground in Mizoram, made him the chief minister, Al Dinga. We made Kivyozi the underground leader, chief minister of Nagaland. Well, we do that in Nagaland, we do that in Mizoram. Afghans are equally our friends. Why are we not doing it with them? And for Pakistan, when you say what was going to happen, I think they are going to go towards the blacklist. And the word I want to use is extricate, which Trump has used. It's not a drawdown, it's not a withdrawal. They're extricating, which gives leverage to Pakistan. No matter what you do now, Pakistan is going to exploit this leverage. Thank you.
Mr. Mattai had a question. I think he left the room. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask a very brief question because time is limited. You must have consulted a vast amount of documentation from the archives.
No, on this issue, not much. Though there is a lot. Because when I actually started doing it, I found, frankly
what
speaking...
I want to ask you is, what do you do when the documents you want to read are classified and not released for public? For example, Mr. Shivshankar Menon in his book, he has used documentation which is not available to the public. So what do I do?
They were stored in the mind.
No, I was working on the paper on India-China border conflict, and I wanted to look at certain documents of the British period. Which are not available. They are the Ministry of External Affairs, I'm told. Why can't we release documents like the British do or other countries do. When documents are over 30 years old, why do you keep them secret and top secret? I don't find it easy for researchers to work in India.
Behind him, sir.
Good evening. My name is Deepak and I'm an IIS student from the South Asian University. My question is to Ambassador Menon. So when we talk about engaging with the Afghanistan in a realistic manner, so is it not going against India's traditional stance against having a boots on the ground policy? Because I think one of the reasons why we've never focused on such a policy in Afghanistan is also based on the Lankan experience which we had. And now what you say is right, like we risk getting sidelined if we don't follow such a proactive policy. But we have changed some of the things, like with respect to the defense deals which we are having. We've been sending them offensive weapons like attack helicopters. So could this be a realistic step, or rather engage more proactively, like boots on the ground?
Good.
Thank you.
So we have a good collection. We have exactly 9 minutes, so I'd say 3 minutes each around. If you want to make any comments, replies, maybe we'll start with you, Mrs. Singh.
Okay. Now, your question first, because this is easily answered. I actually hadn't consulted the archives. The reason is that if you are not in the archives, this is how the things pan out. When you pass by the archives, the first thing you see is that there are these uniformed personnel who sit there. The whole bloody thing looks so daunting that you don't feel like actually entering it. So half of us would actually get frightened away from sort of entering that building, which is directly supervised by Lutyens and Baker. And as far as the classified documents are concerned, they are like blips. So, and we in any case are very loath to declassify. We'd much rather keep it in our archives, our own departmental archives, and not declassify it. And not that everyone's sort of going and consulting it every second day. No one consults it for 40 years, 50 years, but still keeps on lying. But that's a question of, how should I put it, habit.
Do you know why the MA is keeping these documents top secret?
Shall I?
Yeah, please.
Why not?
No, I think the MA line is very simple. We tried to declassify a fair amount. Live issues like India-China boundary, J&K, live issues we have not declassified. And there's very little chance that we'll ever get political approval to actually declassify those. I think because, for obvious reasons. Also, I'll tell you one reason. As long as you're still dealing with an issue, say the India-China boundary, you cannot have an honest discussion within government. You can't write the honest truth in your notes and so on. If tomorrow it's going to be public, whether through RTI or anything else. And what you want is an actual honest examination of at least within government you should be truthful to yourself. And you should argue. You must have that discussion. You don't want just the party line stuck forever. So for me, for some of these issues, which are highly politically sensitive, which are still very live, which involve neighbors like China, Pakistan, I think it's unlikely that you'll get them until you get some resolution of these. And you've moved. If you get a settlement of the India-China boundary, sure, I'm sure we'll release everything. But today there are, well, they don't give you everything, by the way. Please don't assume that these documents that the US or Britain, and they're very free with other people's documents. They're much less free with their own.
I think it's a larger discussion. I'm happy this is happening.
Yeah,
Very happy.
By the way, I'm on your side. I've been arguing for many years that we should put things, Tino will...
And Mr. Menon,
and we did, thanks to Shamsaran, who was here, we did start a whole process of opening up the MEA record rooms. We made it possible for outside researchers to come and sit there and use our documents.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a beneficiary of that. Many people here in the room, or we've quoted, or we show their books, you have been beneficiaries of that. I'd say to post 2009-10, it's when it accelerated. I hear it's slowed down again, unfortunately. But there is, for those who are interested in the room, enough but even if it's
Yeah,
little,
there's lots of stuff.
to do a lot of work. And I'm glad to see many, many more people these days doing that work. You were there also in the National Archives, and you must have seen it. So please, you had, I think, two more more questions.
So on your question, sir, about the migration of population, was it that?
The massacre, the partition
Yeah,
massacre.
and the
And
migration.
as you said that it was
Yeah.
advanced.
Yeah.
Had it been in 1948?
No, my basic thing is that if you have some time, and you know the British are just sort of coming out of your country, and the law and order issue, the issue of communal conflagration, everything is sort of erupting at that particular point of time. Then a phased withdrawal over some period of time is a much better option, rather than you sort of compress everything in 2-3 months and try and sort of resolve it, because obviously you have only 24 hours in a day, and with the kind of system of governance we had, I mean everyone was a lot was happening basically, so to speak.
Because all British, was it all British to be blamed totally?
No, no.
Or it is a leadership failure on our part?
You see, that's a complicated thing. I mean, you can't just sort of have a sweeping statement that the British were to be blamed, or the British bureaucracy along with the Indian bureaucracy, or what we missed out or what we didn't miss out. That's actually a separate debate, and let's not get into that. But the fact of the matter is that if we had some more time, we could have done the same thing much better. And taking cue from this, the Northwest Frontier Province, had it come to India. Now, that's not the question. The question is whether Kashmir, say for example, or Balochistan, or Northwest Frontier Province. You see, if within 3 months or 4 months things are changing, they could change again. So what is the point of taking it to a tipping point and then you just go like this? This is happening. I mean, it's just in 3 months' time, from March to July. Suddenly things have gone out of control in Northwest Frontier Province. Why not wait? Isn't it? So what's the hurry for having a date as 15th of August? Similarly with Balochistan. So I mean, if you have that kind of, I mean, since Nehru considered himself to be an expert on foreign affairs, and so I'm sure the security aspects, etc. But at that particular point of time, if you consult whatever was the correspondences between the British High Commission in say Lahore or Karachi or Rawalpindi and in Delhi, then you actually get privy to a lot of information which is usually not there, and there you find that these guys are saying something which is exactly the kind of trap we are falling into.
And my question was,
Please, we have to finish. Shadi, up to you, and then we'll finish with investors.
Running out of time.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think it was important to talk to the Taliban, and India should have retained that option, and that is a right question. But the fact is also, India also wanted to support the Afghan government processes, by which it didn't want to divulge from that stand. There were feelers from the ground which could have been kept open. And I think putting boots on the ground is not really an option because given the lessons we have had, and also the operational constraints of doing something like that. And more importantly, the goodwill, the social capital India has there would simply be lost. You would be party to the conflict, and you would be involved in a war which is not really your war. So I think that will be unnecessary expenditure and a loss of goodwill. In terms of offensive capabilities, I think India could have done much more. I mean, these helicopters are useful, but they could have given much more in terms of training. And as rightly pointed out, India has this huge experience of dealing with counterinsurgency in its own theaters in Mizoram and Nagaland. And I think herein we could have worked with the Afghans on building a security grid, training them on counterinsurgency capabilities. What they've really been trained on has been more on conventional army terms, and they're actually fighting insurgency. So they're looking at CT plus when the insurgency is raging on the countryside, and the whole experiment India had, be it with Mizoram, Nagaland, and to a certain extent in Jammu and Kashmir, that wasn't really used in Afghanistan, which could have had some kind of parallels and some kind of lessons which could have helped Afghanistan. About Kabul and maintaining weak Kabul, I think that's historically true. But over time, things have changed. You know, it's not the same state we are looking at. And given all the pessimistic reports you hear from Afghanistan, but there has been some progress, and I think there won't be complete drawdown in that sense of losing that progress. But the dangers of subversion of that democratic experiment in terms of the political end state, for instance, if the Taliban come back, they will want some kind of constitutional reform. They want kind of an intra-Afghan dialogue, which has really not occurred. So if that doesn't occur, and if the Taliban do come back in some form, there will be a breakdown of the consensus, which is a recipe for a civil war. So we are looking at serious questions in Afghanistan, and I think over the next month or so, we'll know how things unfold, and maybe I can take questions later rather than keep talking. Thank you. Yes,
I agree with Shanti. Boots on the ground is not the issue. The resistance to our doing more. In fact, since 2011, we did start, training the Afghan National Army. We did also start supplying various things, attack helicopters, various things. The real resistance came from the US at Pakistani instance, because they didn't want us involved with the Afghans. And they actually capped even what ISAF was willing to do with the Afghans. After all, they gave the Afghans no air power. They gave them no intelligence capacity of their own. And they made sure that they controlled that entirely. So there was this, because ISAF felt it had to keep Pakistan on side in order to maintain their own lines of communication and supply. And there was this political imperative. So actually, the Afghan army was left stunted and was prevented from getting help from those who were ready to help. So I think it's a more complicated thing than just, India didn't do what it should have done. There were times, and certainly we were willing to do much more on this front, but there was a lot of resistance. Where will it go? I agree with you. It's not going to just go back to 96 or to, it'll be much more complicated because it's a much more complicated society right now, and polity. But how bad can it get? I mean, none of us can really tell where it goes. Did the geostrategic situation influence the 370 decision? Ask the people who made the decision. I can't answer. I think that's it. One point about the massacres. From the British point of view, advancing the date was a great success. Not one Englishman was touched. And that's a remarkable thing. When hundreds of thousands are being killed.
One or two got killed in Kashmir.
But that was separate. That was nothing to do with partition violence.
But in the war.
In the war. That was in the war by mistake. I mean, they weren't supposed to be there. Anyway, that's a different story. Pasha and...
On the future-oriented note, sir, just India's options in Afghanistan, really, I mean, just that I can ask you. What should India do now in Afghanistan?
Right now?
Yes.
I don't think we should get involved in this. We're not part of this process.
Wait and watch.
This process will collapse, one way or the other, in the face of reality. But the Americans will get out. Question is how much of a face saver they'll get. Once they're out, then we deal with it. Then other people will need us too.
Thank you. So, three thanks. Thanks to you for coming here today and to Brookings India. We hope to do many more of these events. Thank you to the panelists, to Ambassador Menon for joining us and taking time to be here. Dr. D'Souza, who came from Goa especially for this, and we're lucky to have you and hope to have you back here too more often, participating in our program events. And most importantly to Mr. Raghvendra Singh. So I think you've really paid service to many different causes, in particular the cause of scholarship, of history, of informed debate. I invite all of you to buy this book and read it. It's a wealth of information, history. We only touched the surface really here today. And so I understand you're going to write more books, so we hope to have you back on your future books about this.
Balochistan.
About Gilgit, Balochistan, a series of books. And most importantly, I think often we talk about revisionism as a bad word in history. I think you helped us to be revisionist today. I think revisionism is a need in history. We constantly need to question history, revise it, debate it. And I think you've helped us in that. So please join me in a hand for all.